Welcome, everyone, to episode 359 of Just Joshing. I'm your host, Joshua Pentelarosco. I write stuff in podcast 2. Today, it's story time, but with a little bit of a twist. You see, I'm not going to be reading this week. I'm at the end of the chapter, and I got some big cloud diving stuff to get prepared for this week. And don't worry, next week, chapter 3 will start. Wherever we go and whatever we do, it'll be a lot of fun, I promise. However, this week, I needed to work on some other things, so I thought I would let the romance genre come in and represent my story time this weekend with two amazing readers, in Jessica Jackson and Rebekah Jonesy. I did this for a number of reasons. Probably the biggest one, though, the one I feel it's most important, is simply the fact that I have an incredible respect for any of the ladies that do romance. Romance is the backbone of fiction sales, period. They carry the work. It takes a lot of talent to make certain scenes very, very moving. It's not something you have to get inside the head of the person you're reading. That's what we do. We simulate imagination and do it well, especially in this topics. Whether you like the romantic love, the clean stuff, or whether you do like to get down and dirty, it takes skill. It takes great skill, and there's some amazing writers in this genre. And they gave me a break when, at the time, no one else did. They gave me this opportunity to do a live show with them in Calgary about 3 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. So I have nothing but respect for the romance genre. So I thought I'd give them this chance. So I got to give you a small little warning before I let them go. And this is not for kids. If you're shy, you will turn a little beet red, especially if Rebekah's reading. Wow, but it's good. And it's romance. It is quality literature, and I think people deserve to hear it. So without further ado, let's just get to Rebekah, shall we?
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
Hello everyone, I'm Rebekah Jonesy, author of Spicy Romance and Clean Fantasy. And today I would like to tell you about my romance novels. I have several series. I write all genres of romance except clean and wholesome. I also like to keep them realistic, and the one I'm going to tell you guys about today is from my Mandy series. This is a trilogy, but all of my trilogies are interconnected. Most of my books are actually interconnected. So you get to learn more about the side characters and friends of the main couple. Because, let's face it, that's kind of how life goes. And like I said, I like to keep reality main part of this. So this is from Keep Her Safe, that is book 1 of the Mandy series. It is a new adult romance, and it is about a young woman. Actually, let me just read you the blurb. Recently out of an abusive relationship, Mandy is feeling the need to get wild and frisky, something that her controlling ex never allowed. Going on a weekend trip with old friends is just what she needs to get back to her old self. And maybe, just maybe, one of her old friends would be willing to help her ease some of the tension that's been building up since she became single. When Kurt agrees to go camping with Mandy and her friends, he never thought it would be such a struggle for him. The lively young woman that is his best friend's little sister is starting to tempt him in ways he didn't think possible. And when he learns about her plans to get more experience, he wants to jump at the chance to teach her all the ways a woman can enjoy a man. But first, he has to let go of his own loss and harness his frustrations before he can allow himself to be the kind of man a woman can be with. And there is a warning. This is not for the faint of heart. They do get pretty frisky, and the scenes are explicit, but it is also, like I said, it's very realistic. It is about a woman, obviously, who is fresh out of an abusive relationship, and it's the kind of issue, anyone can find themselves in. You bump into a predator, and they see you at a vulnerable moment, and they will charm you and wine and dine you until you think you're You're the queen of the world. As they remove you from your friends and isolate you and start twisting things around in your mind. So this is a story, some people would call it's a story of sexual healing, but it is very much also a story of a woman mending her relationships and her friendships, and it delves a lot into what her friends went through at the same time. Because even though they could see it happening, there's not much you can do for a friend in an abusive relationship until that person is ready to see that they are, in fact, being abused. And that was the struggle that Mandy's friends went through, because as outgoing and extroverted as she is, Mandy is actually a very private person who doesn't share her problems with many people. In fact, the only one she actually shared it with is a family friend of hers, who is Kurt. Kurt was her brother's best friend when they were in high school and college. And just like her and her brother, he was pretty much alone in the world. So this is two lonely people who have been through years of loss and heartache, who are coming together and finally looking at each other through eyes that aren't clouded in their own pain and misery. Because let's face it, when you can find someone that you can share with on such a deep level, you really get to know that person a little bit better. And that's what these two are going through, while also doing their best not to screw up the friendship that they started out with, even though Mandy has had a crush on him since high school. But I am going to read to you from that today, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to start at the start of this because, that'll tell you where everything goes. So, Chapter 1. For the last time, Kurt, I am going, Mandy yelled into the phone. She looked around her new house, at the boxes still stacked against the wall, the bare walls where nothing was hung up yet. The whole house seemed lifeless, barren, still just a house and not a home. But the blank walls are just waiting for me to decorate them and give them life, a good life, a fresh start, she reminded herself. Mandy realized that Kurt hadn't said anything while she was taking in the scenery, and wondered if he was silently counting to 10. When he spoke in his too calm voice, she knew that was exactly what he had been doing. I just think you might want to take some time off to recover and get grounded in your day-to-day life before you go on vacation with a bunch of guys in the woods, alone, all weekend. His words got more clipped the longer he spoke. He was really angry, and Mandy knew that was because he was honestly worried about her. She sighed and leaned against the wall. Brushing her shoulder-length hair back from her face, she once again took stock of her surroundings. The mended leg of the side table, fixed after her ex had kicked it across the room. The table lamp that had been repaired, but still sat crooked on top of it. The distressingly small amount of empty boxes she had used to pack her clothing, the bits that were still left after a fight about proper attire, had destroyed her entire wardrobe. And there, on the edge of the couch, was a testament of just how much Kurt did care. A brand new silk blouse in her favorite lilac color, along with a gift card so she could purchase more of whatever she wanted. Kurt had been her older brother's, best friend for years before cancer took Steve from them. She had always tagged along with them on outings. She adored her older brother, and the three of them had been really close. But then Steve was gone, and Mandy had fallen for James. It had seemed like kismet at the time, finding someone that cherished her and became her world almost overnight. They moved in together, and life seemed so perfect. It had seemed like she was living in a cocoon of happiness, wrapped up in his love and need for her, and a passion that made her head swim. But then the fight started, and no matter how hard she tried, nothing she did was good enough. Her attitude was lousy. Her cleaning was a joke. Her clothes were whorish. Her makeup was too heavy. Her job didn't pay enough, and her performance in bed was laughable. After that, the harsh words turned to throwing things, and escalated until that last day when he had pinned her down and beat her while she sobbed, begging for him to stop. It had been his last act, as he stormed out of the door, that finally got through to her and made her realize it had to stop. As he had snatched up his coat, James turned to yell at her, "And when I get back, you will have this place cleaned up and you will show me the respect I deserve." Then he had knocked down every picture from the mantel and stormed out the door. Shaken and crying, she had gotten up to start picking up the pieces. When she saw the picture of her brother, the frame skewed and the glass cracked, smiling up at her from the carnage, she cried even harder. She couldn't look into his smiling face and continue to be this wretched woman anymore. That night, she contacted the police and her landlord. She never even saw James when he came back. The police had kept him away from her while he screamed threats at her as he was escorted off her property. She took out a restraining order, but refused to press charges, just wanting the whole thing over with while she still had the strength to do it. The landlord changed the locks and was even willing to write her a different house as soon as it became available. That was 4 months ago, and Kurt had been by her side the whole time since. The only friend she still had left after her years in the cocoon that had become her jail cell. Sweet and patient Kurt, who had been so upset that she had hidden what was happening from him. Kurt, who had stepped right back into her life as if nothing had changed between them, and who had helped her put into place the plans she made to take her life back. He didn't try to take over. He just asked what she wanted to do, and then helped her do it when she needed the help. She looked over again at the blouse and the gift card, then up on the mantel, where her brother's smiling face looked down at her. She took a deep breath and focused on those things, on the people that loved her. "Mandy?" Kurt's voice startled her out of her reverie. "Mandy, I'm sorry for getting angry." She heard him let out a low sigh into the phone. "I don't want to tell you what to do or take over your life. I just want you to be safe. You know I promised your brother that. And those guys, I've met some of them. They just seem to be a bit crude." Mandy laughed to herself, thinking about how her friends would respond to that comment. They would probably laugh and say it was my influence, she realized. They really are great guys, Kurt, and they are my friends. I need that right now. I need to reconnect and get back to who I was, who I want to be again. James refused to let me go for the last 2 years. 2 years. This is my chance to take that back. I don't have to explain myself to them or say why I was gone for so long. There I can just walk back into how it was before. Unlike my girlfriends who want an explanation for everything and want to make me go over every last detail for the last 2 years. Especially the parts that deal with my sex life, she thought with a grimace. Mandy heard him sigh again and knew she was getting through to him. He knew how much she craved her old life and the free spirit she used to be before her wings were broken. She perked back up, thinking that her most loyal friend was going to be on her side again. She decided to press the issue and tell him other reasons she should attend. Besides, if I don't go, Stu won't have any place to sleep, since he's sharing my tent. As soon as the words left her mouth, she knew it was a mistake. "He's what?" "Oh, come on, Kurt, it's Stu. He's harmless. He works in IT, for crying out loud. It's not like I'm sharing a tent with Tom or anything." "Huh. I guess I can fit both feet in my mouth at the same time. That's talent," she thought. Stu's tent was in storage, and he isn't sure that it will be waterproof, so I've offered him mine since it's a 2-person tent. That way we can stay warmer, too. Or 3 feet. Where did I get 3 feet from? Staying warm together. The disbelief practically dripped through the phone. "Is that what he said? It's already May. It's plenty warm enough. That sounds more like an excuse to get into your sleeping bag to me. You've got to be careful with guys like that. It's in the mountains. It gets plenty cold up there at night. And the extra body helps the tent warm up. Usually Laura and I share, but she can't make it this year with her new baby. I have a second tent. I can loan one to Stu and sleep alone in mine. It was just going to be easier to take one." "So you would be alone in your tent in the woods up there?" Mandy huffed out an annoyed breath. There was just no making him happy with his plan. "Kurt, I won't be alone. I will be with my friends. If you knew these guys, you wouldn't worry. Hell, if you came with me, you could get to know them and make sure I am safe. Mandy smiled at the picture of Kurt, a city boy who had a standing appointment for a manicure every 2 weeks out in the woods, camping and cooking over a fire. Fine. Mandy blinked in surprise, then snapped her jaw shut, thankful Kurt couldn't see her dumbfounded expression. Really? She had made the offer off the cuff, never thinking that he would actually take her up on it. But the more she thought of it, the more she realized that this could be a really good thing. What better way to relax and have fun than with all of her closest friends? That would be awesome, but I'm leaving out tomorrow before noon. Can you be ready by then? I can supply the sleeping bags and stuff, but I didn't pack food yet. Yeah, if you have the gear, I can be ready. I'll pick you up around 10, and we can hit a grocery store for food and drinks before we get there. Sound good? Mandy grinned and danced around a bit, her mood better than it had been in a long time. Deal. This is going to be so much fun. You'll like them, I swear. And you can see how sharing a tent can be totally platonic, too. And sure, pick me up at 10, but I'm driving. See you tomorrow. She quickly hung up and ran off to find her extra camping gear. Chapter 2. Kurt held the phone up to his ear for a few more seconds before slowly lowering his arm and turning it off. What have I gotten myself into? He wondered, shaking his head at his impulsive response to Mandy. Ever since he had learned about what she had been going through while he had thrown himself into his work following Steve's death, he had been reacting more on impulse than on rational thought. Even the housewarming gift he had picked out for her wasn't really appropriate. She could have used a nude table or lamp or a full set of dishes. Instead, he had bought her clothes. But she looked so nice in her purple shirt, I couldn't help but find a replacement. And the saleswoman matched it perfectly from the photo I took in. It was something she needed anyway, even if the cashier thought I was buying it for the little woman in my life. As usual, he thought back to his friend and how much he had screwed up. Steve had been there for Kurt when Kurt's fiancée had died in a car crash, listening to him for hours, cajoling him out of his depression, convincing him that there was a life out there worth living. And when Steve had introduced him to his younger sister, a sunny, vivacious, laughing bundle of energy, it seemed that there really was a world out there that wasn't wrapped in pain and sorrow. Following the two of them, he had gone back into that world and started living again, with them helping him along. But then Steve died too, and he had slid back into that sad world and left Mandy all alone. She fell in with that James character. He had never even really noticed when she stopped coming around, or when she stopped calling. It never occurred to him that she was being held back from him by her boyfriend, who wanted her all to himself, wanted her to stay in the darkness he wrapped her in. I was too wrapped up in my own dark to see that she was being drowned in her own. I just assumed she was okay. I never checked up on her. I never called. I never watched over her like I said I would. The guilt of his inaction gnawed at him again, a pain he was starting to get used to. But now, in camping? Why did it have to be a camping trip? But then he thought about her suddenly cheerful voice on the phone. This is going to be so much fun. You'll like them, I swear. And you can see how sharing a tent can be totally platonic, too. Sure, pick me up at 10, but I'm driving. See you tomorrow. And smiled. For a moment there, she had sounded like her old self again, bright and sure of herself, ready to take on the world. It was worth the trouble if he got to see that spark in her again. Steve had been the hand that had pulled him out, but Handy had been the light he walked towards. He owed it to Steve, and to Mandy, to be there for her when she needed him. He snorted to himself as he walked back to his room. The guys at work here that I spent a weekend with a perky blonde, then maybe they'll stop trying to set me up on blind dates. I already had the love of my life. Who else could compete with her? And what the hell am I supposed to take for a camping trip anyway? I don't even own any flannel. He rifled through his clothes, looking for his oldest set of jeans and t-shirts. He kept hearing her cheerful voice as she talked about the trip. A smile crept over his face, until he realized what else Mandy had said. Like hell she is driving my car up there. So once again, that is from my book, Keep Her Safe. That is book 1 in the Mandy series. Or if you prefer, you can get it. You can get the series all in one book, and that is Mandy Wild Weekend Getaway. I hope you enjoyed the reading, and if you'd like to read more of my books, you can find me on Kindle Unlimited. So, of course, I'm on Amazon as well. You can also see any of my other books at threefuriespress.com. And you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. Just look me up, Rebekah Jonesy. Like I said, you can find me everywhere, or you can visit my blog at RebekahJonesy@blogspot.com. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Until next time, everyone read well and prosper.
Well, guys, what do you think? I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. And we got another one before it's all said and done, too, and I'm going to get right into it. So Jessica Jackson was the first person to answer the call. So her reading's a little shorter, but definitely just as good. It's a prologue from her book, so definitely take a look. And like I said, I have both ladies' books links below, so if you feel so inclined to support them during this time, feel free to do so. Click on their stuff, buy it, let them know that they're awesome, because they are. And before I continue, I want to both thank Rebekah and Jessica for coming on my show and be willing to do this. I appreciate it very much. And you both are welcome back anytime, and I definitely should be interviewing both of you at some point. All right, guys, let's just get to the next reading, shall we?
Hello, this is Jessica L. Jackson. I am going to read for you the prologue from one of my books, Dance With Me. It's the first in a series of 3 from the Back Beyond series, and I hope you enjoy it, and pray forgive any stumbles in my reading, since I am not a professional reader. Of course, some of them are absolutely amazing. I love to listen to Audible books, and I wish my books were available in Audible, but they are not. They're available as an ebook, or most of them anyways are available also as a normal type of printed book through Amazon.com or .ca or .uk or wherever. So I'm just going to begin, and hopefully I won't be coughing or anything like that through this, so let's go. Dance With Me by Jessica L. Jackson. Jared Owens doesn't know quite how to take the quirky woman who feels so amazing in his arms when they dance. Everyone says the women in the family are strange, but there's something so engaging in Susie's pert laughter, twinkling eyes, and odd behavior. Maybe she can help him figure out what is causing his daughter's nightmares. Something frightening is at work in their lives, and Susie may be just the key to discovering what it is. Susie Wanamaker, the current archivist for the family, is fascinated by the new owner of Port Grange's general store. He's tall, dark, and oh, so handsome. His obvious concern for his lovely, troubled teenage daughter only increases Jared's appeal, for nothing is more important than family. Combine that sensitivity with a love of dancing, easy humor, and a smile that makes her heart do flip-flops in her chest, and Susie quickly finds herself smitten. Dance With Me, prologue. Arlie leaned against the wall facing her father's dressing room. She had been ready for half an hour. Fingering her curly black bangs, she bit her lip to keep from smiling, and then felt guilty about the hidden grin. Her father twisted his tie this way and that, as if this was the first time he had ever tied one. Pretty much every day, for as long as she could remember of her 11 and a bit years, her father had put on his suit and tied his tie, usually without benefit of a mirror. He could form a knot when he talked on the phone, while he prepared his breakfast, while he watched the morning stock report. He could tie one while standing on his head, just to make them laugh. She'd once teased him that he had probably been born wearing a tie, and he'd laughed and then ruffled her hair. He wasn't laughing now. Tossing the rumpled power tie aside, he thrust his hand into the row of silks and pulled out a striped blue, gray, and burgundy one. Frowning fiercely, he dragged it around his neck and then let it hang there, his large hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He turned to her. "I can't seem to get this right today." "I'll do it for you," Arlie said, matching his frown. They both took a step toward each other, ending up in the doorway together. Her father leaned down so she could reach and crooked his neck to the side. Carefully, she pulled the wide end of the tie most of the way down and then started to form the four-in-hand knot that he preferred. After she snugged it tight, she folded the collar back down over the tie. "Turn around," she instructed softly. He turned and then crouched so she could make certain the white fabric covered his tie. Smoothing the shirt across his wide shoulders, she patted his back and stepped away. "There you go." Without checking his mirror, her father grabbed his navy blue pinstriped suit jacket and slipped it around his shoulders. "Thanks, kiddo," he said automatically. The shoes he grabbed at random from the row of dress brogues, wingtips, and loafers were brown. He stared at them for a moment and then let Arlie take them from him and replace them with black brogues. "You put on green socks." Arlie's father glared down at the offending hosiery, stood on one foot, then the other, to strip them off. He accepted a navy pair from his daughter in exchange for the green, which he folded and tossed into the basket on his dressing-room shelf. Her father deftly slipped on the socks, then walked into his bedroom and sat on a chair. Arlie followed him and watched him put on his shoes. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa Coate will be here in time?" "They called last night. Their flight is supposed to be in by 10. He glanced at the alarm clock on the nightstand. "Any time now." He finished tying his laces. For a moment he rested his elbows on his knees and buried his face in his hands. Arlie played with the silver bangle on her left wrist, dismayed at the change that had come over her father since the car accident that had taken her mother's life. Time seemed to stand still while she waited for him to overcome his surge of grief. She blinked away a tear that had somehow sneaked out. She had to be strong for her dad. The great clock in the hall downstairs chimed the hour, startling him. His hands dropped and he looked around wearily. "We should go," Arlie murmured, walking over to her father. She held out her hand. He took it and then tugged her into his embrace. Strong arms engulfed her small frame, hugging her firmly against his chest, while dry sobs racked his body. Arlie stood between her father and her grandmother. Dappled sunlight filtered through the chestnut leaves and onto the buttery yellow petals of her mother's favorite roses. An occasional breeze wafted their scent her way, making her sick to her stomach. She wondered if she would ever like the smell of roses again. The minister droned on while she looked around at the people who had gathered at the graveside. So many people. Of course, she had always thought that her mother was wonderful, but she had never imagined that so many others felt the same way. Glancing up the hill beyond the bowed heads, she saw another group, dressed in black, gathered amongst the old tombstones residing there. A shuffle of those around her drew her gaze back to her mother's grave. The pallbearers were using straps to lower the casket into the earth's black mouth. The minister offered her father a silver shovel. He stared blankly ahead. "Mr. Owens?" Her father started, and then used the small shovel to cast dark earth down into the grave. He returned the shovel to the minister. Arlie's eyes widened as the shovel was held out to her. She looked into the kindly face of the minister, a man she had never met before today, and then back at the silver spade. Her hand moved toward the handle as if it had a mind of its own. She didn't want to touch it, yet somehow she found herself grasping the tool. Arlie didn't want to throw the dirt down on the roses, however, zombie-like, she did just that. Damp soil nestled amongst the petals of the roses, and their mingled smells drifted up to fill her nostrils. Arlie struggled to keep from throwing up. She dropped the shovel and heard it hit the ground and then slide into the grave, where it struck the white casket. Her gorge rose up to gag her. She covered her mouth with her hand and dove through the crowd, searching desperately for some place private to be sick. She spied the old gravestone farther up the incline. Running quickly, stumbling a bit, she reached the nearest large stone and collapsed behind it, heaving up the toast she had eaten for breakfast. Tears streamed down her face by the time she found she could stagger back against a large tree trunk. Swiping her hands across her face, Arlie gulped air to stop herself from sobbing. That was when she saw him. He looked odd, dressed all in black, and vaguely familiar. He was standing there watching her, his head cocked to the side. "What are you looking at?" she demanded in the strident, harsh tone peculiar to almost 12-year-olds. Arlie searched for a Kleenex in her pocket so she could wipe her nose and eyed the stranger cautiously. "Are you unwell?" he asked. Though his voice sounded concerned, Arlie thought she detected a false note in it, as if her unhappiness pleased him. "Go away," she said, standing straight again. There was something about him that creeped her out. A shudder of fear rippled through her stomach. She moved slowly around the tree and put several graves between them. "I want to assist you. Please, permit me to come closer." He took several bold steps forward. "Keep back!" Arlie cried, tripping over depression, her breath coming in angry, frightened gasps. She scrambled away. The stranger slowed his advance. He held out his hand to her. "You need assistance. You are so distressed. I can see that. No, do not go. Forget it, weirdo," Arlie said, gaining her feet. She turned her back on him and started to run down the hill. Enormous relief surged through her at the sight of her father walking away from the group of mourners, looking for her. He raised an arm and called, "Arlie, are you okay?" She ran into her father's arms. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the book, if you are so inclined. And have a great day. Bye.
Think you have what it takes to survive? Then get your ass to Mars! Get Your Ass to Mars is the latest simulation sensation courtesy of Indie Imprint. You are pitted against the hostile nature of Mars. Can you survive and pave the way for future colonists? Or will you succumb to the many pitfalls and obstacles in your way? Get Your Ass to Mars, the Dragon Edition, is available now on PC and Steam. Go to indieimprint.com for more details.
Thanks, ladies, very much for your time. And like I said, guys, their links for their books are below. So click on them, pre-order, order, buy, let them know they're awesome. Ladies, thank you very, very much for coming on my show. I got one more big announcement to make here, and I'm going to do it here. My newsletter peeps have gotten it first, but you guys will be second. I'm going to be doing my first Zoom live show for the podcast, May 17th. My guest, the one and only Sophia Evangelina. So I'm going to be doing that weekend 4 podcasts I need to drink. And but I'm going to be doing some amazing, this is a really cool, one-of-a-kind podcast even for me. Sophia is going to be unveiling a piece of her latest single coming up, Door. And we're going to create a very unique show, something I've never done before, actually. And I'm really, really stoked to do this. And I want to thank Sophia up front for giving me this opportunity. It's going to be a lot of fun to do. It's something I've always wanted to do with my skills that I've acquired doing this. And I'm hoping everybody, it will be a live show. I'm hoping you guys come and watch it for yourselves, because it's going to be a one-of-a-kind show. I promise. And more details of this week coming up and next week following. But for all that, that'll do it for this week of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, I almost forgot. Before I wrap up, next week's reading guest, the one and only Danica Stone. I can't wait. Yeah, me and her, Chapter 3 of The Cloud Diver, and Danica Stone will follow it up. Followed by the week after, Stacey Overby. And then followed by Krista Wallace. And then the Sophia live show will happen. And there will be a final guest. I'm going to keep a secret for now. But it's going to be at the top of an incredible month of May. I cannot wait to tell you guys. Now we can do this. This will do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. I'm on all platforms. If you want to do it on Podomatic, you can do so too. Share it. Tell people why it's awesome. Just do what you can. And if you don't like the show, don't tell anybody. I'm really good with that too. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pintellaresco. My Twitter, Instagram is @jpintellaresco. I have a newsletter. Sign up for it. Join it. There's some really cool stuff. I give away books. I advertise other cool things coming up with myself and other creators. It's a great little newsletter. The links are below. Feel free to sign up. Also, my books, Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, available through MirrorWorldPublishing.com. Check out The Cloud Diver. Stay tuned next podcast for more details there. There's merchandise you can buy. The link's in the description as well. Feel free to do so. Stay inspired out there, guys. It was a pleasure doing this way this week. And And I'll definitely do another genre again down the road. So with that all said, have a good one, and I'll see you this week.
Josh. Shush.